Hi, my name is Tony Jackson. I am the Real Money Coach. Listen, I wear multiple hats. I am a national marketing director with First Financial Security. I've had my own business for 24 years. I've even been appointed by our leader, Dr. George Frazier, to head up his WINS program, financial literacy. I want to start my time out with you today by telling you a story of a couple clients. I was teaching a class through the WINS program. And after the class, a lady came up to me and said, "Hey, I'd like to have an appointment with you." Now, this lady, we'll call her Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Jones, she reminded me actually of my own mother. And so I just kind of smiled at Mrs. Jones and I said, "Sure." And so I exchanged my card with her, got her information. We set up an appointment. Now, let me tell you about Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Jones was an educator. As many of our African American professionals started out in education, she was an educator. She taught for 30 years in Prince George's County in Maryland. And Mrs. Jones, just like most of us, when benefits enrollment time came around, she enrolled in her benefits program. She signed up for her health insurance, her dental insurance. She was part of the teachers' state retirement plan, but she also went above and beyond that. She signed up for the 403 program as well. So Mrs. Jones is putting a lot of money away for her retirement. And she just loved what she did, right? She was one of those teachers that the students loved her. They gravitated to her classroom because they knew she cared about them. So she was teacher of the year one year. So she had this wonderful career in education. And so, anyway, fast forward, we make this appointment. I go down and I sit down with Mrs. Jones. And as we're looking at her portfolio of retirement, life insurance, all the things that society tells us we should do. And we look at it and we go through all these things. And I can remember it like yesterday. Mrs. Jones looked me square in the eye and she asked me this question: why am I paying so much in taxes? And I know many of you may be thinking that if you're in retirement, why am I paying so much in taxes? Now, in contrast, I want to introduce you to Mr. Baker. Now, Mr. Baker was different. Mr. Baker had a high school education. Mr. Baker worked at the local grocery store. Upon graduation, he was bagging groceries. He moved up to cashier. Eventually, Mr. Baker becomes the manager of the meat department at his local grocery store. And there was a guy that came in there every week and he had a nice suit on, very well dressed, looked like he didn't even belong in this little small town. And one day, this guy asked Mr. Baker, "Do you enjoy being the manager of the meat department?" And Mr. Baker replied, "Yeah, I love what I do, but I could stand to make some more money." So they agreed to talk. This guy was an insurance agent. So Mr. Baker, a couple weeks later, becomes an insurance agent, does car insurance, homeowners insurance, those type of things. But because he was an independent contractor like many of us, he didn't have a retirement or 401k available to him. So he used other alternative methods to save for his retirement. He bought real estate. He had the proper life insurance. He did a lot of other things that most of us don't think about doing. And so I can remember Mr. Baker eventually retired. And that's when I became his agent. And he started working with me. And I'll never forget the day Mr. Baker comes into my office. He sits in front of my desk and he lays out this beautiful brochure of this Cadillac Escalade. I mean, it was loaded, right? It was a Cadillac Escalade, had all the bells and whistles, everything that you wanted in a car. So he laid this brochure out and he tells me this. He says, I'm gonna buy this truck next week. I was like, wow. So I turned to my computer, and I'm thinking that he wants to know how much his insurance is gonna be. What Mr. Baker tells me, no. I don't really care about how much the insurance is. I need 50 grand to buy this truck. And I want it out of my life insurance. So the next day, Mr. Baker comes to my office. He picks up a check for $50,000, no paperwork, no questions, and no taxes. So what's the difference between Mrs. Jones and Mr. Baker? Mr. Baker was exposed to some information that Mrs. Jones never knew. And see, the information that he was exposed to was the impact of taxes in our retirement. See, many of us, we don't have a savings problem. Many of us don't have even a retirement problem, but what we have is a tax problem. And so Mrs. Jones, everything she's taken out of her retirement, she's being taxed. The principal, the gain, all of it. And so now she's 70 years old and she's paying all these taxes and she wants to know why. How do I fix this? How do I correct this? Where Mr. Baker, he understood this. He understood this early in his career, even though he only had a high school education. He understood the fact that if I put money in the right vehicles, when the time comes, I'll be able to get that money out and I won't have to pay taxes. I won't have to apply for credit. I can just take the money out, go buy a brand new truck right off the showroom floor, pay cash for it, and pay myself back. We call it banking on yourself or infinite banking. Listen, this has been going on for a long time. Prior to the Great Depression, cash value life insurance was the very thing that most people put their money in for safety. And so when the market crashed and the Great Depression happened, their values didn't go anywhere. And then they could go in there, they could take that money out and use it to start a business or to retire off of. But the problem is that we haven't always known that these things exist. And my job is to tell you and to show you how these things can work for you. And so I outline these type of strategies in my new book, iPad Your Money: Increase, Protect, and Dominate Your Money. The tagline is this: retire financially free, debt-free, tax-free, stress-free. So I'm encouraging you to go to iPadYourMoney.com, iPadYourMoney.com. Get the book for PNC. Listen, if you go there and you order your book, it's free. There's no cost to you. You just pay shipping and handling. And I also want to encourage you to come by the First Financial Security booth. Come by our workshop. See what this is all about. Get a taste of these strategies that will help you increase your financial IQ, that will help you protect yourself when the stock market crashes so that you don't lose any money, that will protect you from taxes so that you don't pay too much in taxes like Mrs. Jones is doing in her retirement. It'll also show you how to protect yourself from medical aging costs. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the spin down process. That if you ever had been in that process where you needed care, assistant care, or you needed long-term care or nursing care in your later years, in your golden years, so that you don't have to spend all your own money. If anybody's been through that process, you know what I'm talking about. You can lose your family home, all of your assets to get this paid for. And also legacy. Now, understand this, people. Understand that almost half of adults have no life insurance. And we think of life insurance as that thing that pays when we die, but it's much more than that. We're talking about life insurance you don't have to die to use. We're talking about a way to transfer generational wealth from one generation to the next. Do you know 60% of all wealth transfers involve some type of use of life insurance? So it's about financial planning. It's not about just death. And then finally, legal protection, legacy. Now, we've seen it. We've heard it. Prince, Aretha Franklin, James Brown, they all had these estates, but they didn't have the proper estate plan together. So I'm encouraging you to make sure that you take the steps so that the state in the probate court is not deciding on what's happening to your things. And this is just something that's been going on. Even Elvis Presley, when he died, his estate was worth $10 million. By the time probate court in the state of Tennessee was done, it was worth $3 million. 70% of his wealth was gone. Don't let this happen to you. Properly plan. Come join our workshop, stop by our booth, And as I mentioned, if nothing else, go to ipadyourmoney.com and order and reserve your free book that will be released in August, Increase, Protect, and Dominate Your Money. Thank you. I am Tony Jackson. I am your real money coach.